And it would also have been an inconsistency with the forward, where it was stated that his military planning allows for some of the WMD to be ready within 45 minutes of an order to use. I
think it's expressed differently, but I don't think it's inconsistent. And as I say, he expressed it differently again when he stood up in the House of Commons. But you know, we don't all go around just saying the same thing in exactly the same way on every occasion. I really don't think that. I think this is a point that has been gone over exhaustively, not because of any of the decision-making process at the time of the dossier, but because of the controversy which followed much later.
I'm about to finish and I'll come to that. I just want to check first, were you aware that there were a number of intelligence professionals, I'm thinking here of Dr. Brian Jones and others in DIS, who were aware that this tightening up of language was creating a degree of certainty in the language that was not justified? He wasn't opposed to including the phrase, but he said it should be intelligent suggests.
I wasn't, and I was aware, as I said earlier, of some reports in the press of some people within the agencies suggesting disquiet. But as I said to you earlier, John Scarlett, Richard Dearlove and others made clear that did not represent the view of the leadership of the agencies, nor indeed their own assessment of how most people within the agencies felt.
And then just finally, can I conclude? You've mentioned already this footnote in the Butler report, which comments on correspondence with editors of national and regional newspapers. And what it says there is that a number suggested that the 45-minute story attracted attention because it was eye-catching in a document containing much that was either not new or rather technical in nature. So it did attract a lot of attention. It wasn't just because of what happened with the Today story and so on. It attracted a lot of attention at the time.
It attracted some. I think the main look, the big message and the big point that came out of that day's events, as I recall, was that Tony Blair, the Prime Minister, was publishing an intelligence-based dossier that explained why he believed Iraq was a current, serious and credible threat. And then lots and lots and lots and lots of detail, and virtually every single point within the dossier was getting some sort of attention and some sort of coverage.
I mean,
all I can say is we did not see it and did not plan our communications around that particular point.
I think Jonathan Powell will send you an email on the 19th of September. Alistair, what will be the headline in the Standard on the day of publication? What do we want it to be? What did you want it to be?
What did I reply?
I don't know. What did you want it to be?
Look, by then, you can. I know that we have and maybe I have a reputation for sort of worrying and obsessing about headlines. The truth is, I don't, and I never did for a very, very large period that I was in Downing Street, because I reached the point of understanding. This goes back to the point about what strategic communications is. It's not really about one headline, it's not about one bulletin, it's whether you are communicating over time your objectives clearly, your strategic thinking clearly, and whether you are getting your message through to the public. So Jonathan inquiring like that, fine. As to whether I replied or what I replied, I haven't got a clue.
So when you saw Evening Standard, 45 minutes from attack, Iraqis could have N-bomb in a year, the Sun, Brits 45 minutes from doom, a reference to Cyprus, Express, Saddam can strike in 45 minutes. Were you surprised by those headlines?
I'm not surprised by anything that most of the British newspapers write on a daily basis. But all I can say to you is it was when we were preparing that, and it is really why it's so unfortunate that the debate developed as it did subsequently when the BBC broadcast the broadcast that they did. Actually, I think it was a very, very important development in government communications, and I think there's a risk arising out of this, that in future very difficult international crisis situations that develop, that because of the controversies that have subsequently flowed, that politicians and they don't take the decisions that maybe they should. I defend every single word of the dossier. I defend every single part of the process. I think it was a genuine attempt by the Prime Minister and the government to engage the public properly in trying to in understanding why the Prime Minister was thinking was developing as it was.
I'm sure others want to come in. Just as a final point, again, I think from one of the lessons, where we are about lessons learned, and the importance of this, and maybe we agree on your final observation in terms of the government may want to do this sort of thing in the past, that it is therefore important to understand why this particular product is now looked at so negatively, and perhaps the lessons that are to be learned are about taking more care with the language.
I really would like to come back on that, because I don't believe that it was looked at negatively at the time. It was insofar as you say it's looked at negatively, it's looked at negatively by a media that just refuses to accept that when Lord Hutton investigated it and looked at it in the detail that he did, he came to the only conclusion that any analysis of the evidence could lead you. Since when, they never tell anybody what the Hutton report concluded. They simply say that it was a whitewash, and this man of Ulster granite who put us all through our paces. Oh heavens, heaven forbid. No, but that's the point. That is
that's not what I'm. That's not the point that I'm concerned with here. I mean, the reason why the dossier.
Please don't cross-talk. It's important.
But I really think I should have the opportunity to respond to this, because I think it goes to the heart of it. You say the dossier is regarded negatively. Now, actually, a lot of people do not regard it negatively, because they understand that the basis of the case that the Prime Minister made is contained within there, about a genuinely perceived threat. If you have a media culture that decides that because a certain inquiry did not find, as they kept telling their viewers and listeners and readers they were going to do, on the points that you've just been raising, and day after day after day, they tell people, actually, they didn't get to the truth, only we can get to the truth, then no wonder people end up thinking, what was that about? And then when they deliberately conflate with the paper that will no doubt come onto in February, so they routinely say that the dossier we've been discussing was lifted off the internet. And it's no wonder the public started to think, well, what was that all about?
But the reason why the document became controversial and the issue arose in the end was because, unfortunately, a lot of the material that was contained within it, when tested against what was actually in Iraq after the invasion, it turned out not to be there. I mean, the big problem was the
right,
case...
So then you have a debate about the intelligence, which the Butler's inquiry, that's what that was about. But my point, I think actually that point makes my point for me. Lord Hutton stated in terms, even if the intelligence turns out to have been wrong, it did not justify the reporting of the issue. And my point is, it's the reporting of the issue and the controversy that caused, and indeed the tragedy that caused, that is what makes it viewed by some in the way that you've described. And I'm sorry, that is my very strongly held opinion, and I cannot see it any other way.
Well, I think we're coming from a different direction to that, but I'll pass on that.
Thank you. I'm going to declare the lunch break at this point. We've heard evidence so far on your role as Director of Communications and Strategy, on some of the key meetings you attended in that capacity, and on the September 2002 dossier. I think one or two of my colleagues have got just a couple of follow-up points on that after the break. Then we would like to take further evidence on the February dossier, your understanding and involvement in the development of British government policy on Iraq after that, and the coordination of the government's wider public information campaign on it. So I suggest we break until 2 o'clock and come back then. Now, could I just bring to the attention of those of you who've been attending throughout the morning, if you wish to attend again this afternoon, you will need to re-register, and the reception desk will open for that purpose at 1:15. That's downstairs. So with that, we'll come back at 2 o'clock. Thank you.